Let's get into it. Sagittarius rising, your zodiacal year ahead, Aries to Pisces season 2022 to 2023. If we haven't met yet, my name is Shuka. I am a traditional astrologer that uses both Hellenistic and ancient Persian techniques in order to decipher the language of the stars and map out what's coming up for you. Feel free to like and subscribe for future videos that help you maximize your potential using the stars, like they say, as above, so below. In order to get into the spring season, which covers Aries, Taurus, and Gemini season, we gotta backtrack a little bit to December 29th of 2021, when Jupiter moved into your Pisces 4th house, which deals with home, property, roots, and foundation. This is a period of expansion that began here in this area of life, particularly given that Jupiter is at home here in Pisces. Think abundance in this area in particular. And on February 3rd, 2022, all planets were stationed direct, beginning a period where there is a go, go, go vibe or forward propelling motion that will last until April 29th of 2022. And on March 20th, 2022, the sun made its way into Aries, marking the beginning of spring and a new zodiacal year. On April 4th, 2022, Mars conjunct Saturn in your Aquarius 3rd house. Depending on if you're a day or night chart will impact how this plays out for you, but Mars being the planet of taking action or charging forward, and Saturn being the planet of restrictions, boundaries, loving to say no, especially in Aquarius. Think wanting to take action on something dealing with a short-term trip or your community, neighbors, siblings, or news, and being met with strict resistance or boundaries or just a flat-out no. Don't worry, this too shall pass. On April 12, 2022, Jupiter conjuncts Neptune in your Pisces 4th house, dealing with home, property, roots, and foundation. This is not a good time to make irreversible decisions. Think of this as things might be too good to be true. There may be some delusion or confusion surrounding them, or you might be placing something on a pedestal. So it's best to wait before you do anything you can't take back. On April 29th, 2022, Pluto stations retrograde in your Capricorn 2nd house. This house deals with things like your personal resources, your finances, and your values. And with Pluto being the planet of rebirth or transformation, think of it as a rethinking or a revisiting deep-rooted beliefs that you may have surrounding this area of life, leading to a transformation there. On April 30th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Taurus 6th house. Now, the 6th house deals with things like your subordinates, coworkers, your physical health, and pets. And think of an eclipse as a cataclysmic event setting off a chain reaction leading to a change over the course of the next 6 months, either a new beginning or an ending of some kind. And it's always usually out of your control. So it's circumstances you can't impact or affect other than how you react to them or how you respond to them, so to speak. So on April 30th, with this partial solar eclipse in your Taurus 6th house of physical health, subordinates, coworkers, and pets, think of it as a cataclysmic event setting off a chain reaction leading to a new beginning in this area of life, playing out for you over the course of the next 6 months. On May 10th, 2022, Jupiter enters your Aries 5th house. This house deals with things like love, sex, romance, creativity, and the things that you birth into this world. And Jupiter being the planet of growth and expansion, expect to see a lot more activity here. On May 15th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Scorpio 12th house. The 12th house deals with things like your mental health or isolation. So think of it as a cataclysmic event leading a chain reaction to a ending here that plays out over the course of the next 6 months. On June 4th, 2022, Saturn stations retrograde in your Aquarius 3rd house, which deals with short-term trips, community, neighbors, news, and siblings. So think internalizing or revisiting boundaries or restrictions or structures that you may have in place here, leading us into the summer season, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo season, which is way differently paced. It is a much slower, all retrograde action, all about rethinking, revisiting, reanalyzing. Not a great time to start something new, more about going back and making sure that things are done the way that you want them. On June 28th, 2022, Neptune stations retrograde in your Pisces 4th house of home, property, roots, and family. Think of it as a rethinking of the dreams or ideals that you have in this area of life. On July 28th, 2022, Jupiter stations retrograde in your Aries 5th house of love, romance, creativity, and the things that you birth into the world, also sex. So think of it as a rethinking of the expansions that's recently taken place here. On August 24th, 2022, Uranus stations retrograde in your Taurus 6th house of physical health, subordinates, coworkers, and pets. So think of it as a rethinking of disruptions or innovative solutions that may have played out here in this area of life, taking us into a little bit of a busier fall season. That's Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius season. On October 8th, 2022, Pluto stations direct in your Capricorn second house. The rethinking that you did of those deep-seated beliefs that you have surrounding your personal resources, your finances, or your values have now led you to implement whatever transformation or rebirth that needs to take place here. On October 22nd, 2022, Saturn stations direct in your Aquarius third house, which deals with short-term trips, siblings, community, news, things of that nature. So think now that you've rethought those boundaries and those restrictions, you're ready to implement that into the new structure here going forward. On October 25th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Scorpio 12th house. This deals with mental health and isolation. So think a cataclysmic event that leads to a new beginning playing out over the course of the next 6 months in this area of life. On October 27th, 2022, Jupiter retrograde moves back into your Pisces 4th house, dealing with home, property, roots, and foundation. So think rethinking the expansion that's taken place here. On October 30th, 2022, Mars stations retrograde in your Gemini 7th house. This house deals with intimate relationships, one-on-one relationships, whether they be romantic, business partnerships, or contracts. And depending on whether a day or night chart will basically indicate whether this works out as a challenging period for you or a more kind of difficult, but not insurmountable challenging period for you. With Mars being the planet of action and wanting to charge forward, and it being retrograde, which is much more about reanalyzing, revisiting, or kind of internalizing things, think of it as a rethinking of the actions that you're taking in your intimate relationships, whether they be romantic, business, or contractual. On November 8th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Taurus 6th house of coworkers, subordinates, pets, and physical health. So think a cataclysmic event that leads to an ending taking place over the next 6 months here. On November 23rd, 2022, Jupiter stations direct in your Pisces 4th house of home, property, roots, and foundation. So if you remember back between May and July of 2021, Jupiter briefly dipped into Pisces before going back into Aquarius, giving us a preview of the growth and expansion that was going to take place in this area of life for us. And then on December 29th of 2021 to May 10th of 2022, think of this as like the peak or climax period of the growth and expansion that's taking place here. And then it dips into Aries before retrograding back into Pisces and again stationing direct. So think of it as a rethinking of all of the growth and abundance that's taken place in this area of life. And finally, having a comfortable way forward with how the growth and expansion is taking place here before Jupiter finally leaves Pisces for good and doesn't come back here for about 12 years or so. On December 3rd, 2022, Neptune stations direct in your Pisces 4th house of home, property, and roots and foundation. So think you've rethought the ideals and the dreams that you have in this area of life and are ready to implement them moving forward, as well as potential for outside circumstances allowing that to happen. And on December 20th, 2022, Jupiter enters your Aries 5th house of love, sex, romance, creativity, and the things that you birth into this world, really beginning that peak climax period of growth and expansion in this area of life. Lastly, leading us into the winter season, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces season. On January 12th, 2023, Mars stations direct in your Gemini 7th house of intimate relationships, business partnerships, contracts. So think you've rethought the actions that you want to take here and you're ready to actually implement them and charge forward. On January 22nd, 2023, Uranus stations direct in your Taurus 6th house of physical health, coworkers, subordinates, and pets. So think a rethinking of the disruptions or innovative solutions that have come to pass here and implementing them moving forward. And again, between January 22nd, 2023 to April 21st of 2023, we have another go, go, go period where all the planets are stationed direct, so it's propelled forward moving motion. On March 7th, 2023, Saturn finally leaves your 3rd house of short-term trips, communication, community, neighbors, siblings, news, and moves into your Pisces 4th house of home, property, roots, and foundation. So think restrictions or boundaries and structures in that area of life coming to pass. On March 15th, 2023, it's a little bit of an interesting day. It'll play out for you differently, whether you're a day or a night chart. If you're a day chart, it might be a little bit more on the difficult side. Night chart, still a little on the challenging side, but not as insurmountable. The sun in your Pisces 4th house of home, property, roots, and foundation will square Mars in your Gemini 7th house of one-on-one relationships and business partnerships, contracts. So think tension between these two areas of life. To quote Marin, it is a passive-aggressive mess. And on March 16th, 2023, Mercury joins this party. So Mercury, the Sun, and Neptune, all conjunct in Pisces, your 4th house of home, foundation, property, and roots, will be square or in tension with Mars in your Gemini 7th house of one-on-one or intimate relationships. The good news is tension usually helps growth, and so it might be a little bit of a challenge to get to the other side, but you'll likely be better off on the other end. Well, if you're a day chart, it may be a little bit of a struggle, but we're here for you. And as if that's not enough of a party, Venus in your Aries 5th house of love, sex, romance, creativity will square Pluto in your 2nd house of finances and resources and values. It's a lot of passive aggressiveness. It's a lot of tension. The good news is stagnant things tend not to grow, so embrace the chaos. And on March 20th, 2023, the sun enters Aries, beginning a new zodiacal year. Let's go through the retrogrades, starting with Mercury. Expect delays, expect poor communication, expect technological mishaps, and expect transportational issues. And for the love of God, try not to sign any contracts or mess with your hair. On May 10th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Gemini 7th house of intimate relationships. Think of this as a rethinking, reanalyzing, or revisiting this area of life. It will retrograde back into your Taurus 6th house of subordinates, coworkers, pets, and physical health. So a rethinking here before it stations direct on June 3rd, 2022. On September 9th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Libra 11th house, dealing with social networks, organizations, groups, and your future goals. So think of rethinking in that area of life before it dips back into your Virgo 10th house, which deals with your public image or your public career. So a rethinking in that area of life before it stations direct here October 2nd of 2022. And the last Mercury retrograde of the zodiacal year coming up. On December 29th, 2022, Mercury stations retrograde in your Capricorn 2nd house, dealing with your personal resources, finances, and values until it stations direct here on January 18th, 2023. So think of rethinking in that area of life. Getting into the other planetary retrogrades, quick recap. On October 30th, 2022, Mars stations retrograde in your Gemini 7th house of one-on-one relationships, whether it be partnerships, romantic, contracts. It will station direct here on January 12th of 2023. If you're a day chart, this might be a little bit more on the challenging end. If you're a night chart, it could still have some challenges, but it's a little bit more surmountable. On July 28, 2022, Jupiter stations retrograde in your Aries 5th house of love, romance, creativity, and the things that you birth into the world, sex. Think of this as a rethinking of the growth and expansion that has occurred here. It will move back into your Pisces 4th house of home, property, foundation, and roots before it stations direct here on November 23rd, 2022. And on June 4th, 2022, Saturn stations retrograde in your Aquarius 3rd house, which deals with your community, neighbors, siblings, short-term trips, news. So think of rethinking in this area of life until it stations direct here on October 22nd, 2022. Recapping the outer planet retrogrades, on August 24th, 2022, Uranus stations retrograde in your Taurus 6th house of physical health, coworkers, subordinates, and pets. Think of rethinking of the disruptions or innovative solutions that you have in this area of life until it stations direct here on January 22nd, 2023. On June 28th, 2022, Neptune stations retrograde in your Pisces 4th house of home, property, roots, and foundation. So think of rethinking of the dreams or the ideals that you have in this area of life until it stations direct here on December 4th, 2022. And on April 29th, 2022, Pluto stations retrograde in your Capricorn 2nd house of personal resources, finances, and values. So think of rethinking in this area of life that may lead to a transformation or rebirth until it stations direct here on October 8th, 2022. And to recap the eclipses that are taking place this year, on April 30th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Taurus 6th house dealing with subordinates, coworkers, pets, and physical health. So think a cataclysmic event that leads to a new beginning playing out over the course of the next 6 months in this area of life. On May 15th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Scorpio 12th house, which deals with mental health and isolation. So think a cataclysmic event that sets off a chain reaction leading to an ending taking place over the course of the next 6 months. On October 25th, 2022, there is a partial solar eclipse in your Scorpio 12th house, which deals with mental health and isolation. Think of this as a cataclysmic event setting off a chain reaction leading to a new beginning playing out here over the course of the next 6 months. And lastly, on November 8th, 2022, there is a total lunar eclipse in your Taurus 6th house, the house of subordinates, coworkers, pets, and physical health. So think a cataclysmic event leading to an ending taking place here over the course of the next 6 months. So that's it for your zodiacal year ahead, Aries to Pisces season 2022 to 2023. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, particularly comment. I love to read how these zodiacal transits play out for everybody. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.